Thank you, Pastor Richard. Beautiful. I'm going to take a moment to set up, so if you want to, as things are being collected, take a moment to say hello to the person next to you. Catch up on the week.
I'll show you some photos. Absolutely.
You may know... Oh, that didn't work. Let's try the right password. Something went wrong there. There we go. Now I can see it. You may notice that Pastor Robin and Pastor Frank... Pastor Robin and Frank are not here. Yesterday was Matt's wedding. It was beautiful. It was just... Obviously, he looked handsome and she looked beautiful, but more than that, they are beautiful. And it was so lovely to hear and to see and to be reminded of how God brought them together and worked that they are together, and appropriately planning and prepping and then being at a wedding. Those of us who were at the wedding will tell you we're tired. Yeah. I can only imagine what Pastor Robin and Frank are feeling today. So appropriately... need a recovery day, yeah? And Dave. He looked quite dapper as a groomsman, and I thought he spoke very well too. Actually, he gave one of the speeches. So as we come to our time to share, I wonder, Easter's, as many of us are saying, it's catching us all off guard because it's the year, it's earlier, because it's to do with the cycles of the moon rather than the calendar dates. So here we are, basically a week away from Easter. How are you feeling about Easter? How prepared are you feeling? We ask the question when it comes to Christmas, but Easter's also pretty significant. Where are you at on reflecting? I think that Pastor Richard gave us a great moment to place ourselves in that, to even consider the old rugged cross. And I, in that moment, can just hear my dad singing that chorus. My goodness. So it has a double powerful moment for me. I thought today we would take a moment to actually just consider some of the things that were happening around the Easter week. Now, yes, it's Palm Sunday today, but I'd actually like to go in terms of the particular timeline journey, a couple of days before Palm Sunday. And if you would like to turn to John 12, that's where we're going to base ourselves for a lot of today. Now, John 12 finds us, it says, I'll wait till you're there, because it says it, I'm going to start reading it, so I might as well make sure you've got it up and running. I'm going to read from the New Living Translation just because that happens to be the one currently open in my Bible. And it says, 6 days before the Passover celebration began, Jesus arrived in Bethany. Now, as it happens, 6 days before is questionable. It'd be easy to think that's the Saturday. I think there's some thought that it's actually the Thursday in the timeline around, actually it's the following Wednesday night or Thursday that that they have the Passover dinner. Because remember, the dinner happened, they had Passover, and the next day he was crucified. And I think, so something like that, that's a Wednesday or a Thursday of a given week. Oh, I was looking at the wrong screen to read the verses. Let's try that. Okay, Jesus arrived in Bethany, the home of Lazarus, and it reminds us this is the man who was raised from the dead. In actual fact, it's the story right before this. It's the last story we hear, the last testimony we are given in the Bible before we're given exact time frames for Easter. It says after the story when Jesus then goes away for a while because so many people are overwhelmed by the story and want to be near him that he goes away for a bit. It actually says, and that was near the time of Passover. And then we move to chapter 12 and it says 6 days before. So it's all very fresh. I'm assuming Lazarus is no longer very fresh now that he's alive. And a dinner was prepared in Jesus' honour. Actually, and if we're in Bethany, then we know, it said, the home of Lazarus. You've got no idea how tired I am, so if I say some silly things, can we have a bit of grace today? I'm upright and I'm cognitive, and I think God's got a word. I know God's got a word, so we're all good. All right, so a dinner was prepared in Jesus' honour. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who ate with him. Then Mary took a 12-ounce jar of expensive perfume made from essence of nard, and she anointed Jesus' feet with it, wiping his feet with her hair. The house filled with the fragrance. Can you imagine? But Judas Iscariot, the disciple who would soon betray him, said, "The perfume was worth a year's wages. It should have been sold and the money given to the poor." Not that he actually cared for the poor. He was a thief, and since he was in charge of the disciples' money, he often stole some for himself. Jesus replied, "Leave her alone. She did this in preparation for my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." And we'll read more of it, but I want to pause there. By name, we have 5 characters in our story. Jesus, which is always excellent, and given we're heading into Easter, central. But we have Martha, Lazarus, Mary, and Judas. And I find it actually very telling how John describes what each of them did as we consider those players. Take a moment, have a look over it, see if there's something that's curious that you note to consider the players. Maybe say to the person next to you something you've picked up on in this story that you think is, well, that was interesting. Or, why has he said it that way? Or maybe that's not it, you just share what you love about this particular story. Take a moment. I can hear little bits and pieces, and I think there's some really interesting things in there. Like, we could probably, just even with 2 or 3 of those, grab what you said and turn that into an entire sermon. But I'm not going to do that. So I love that you talked and shared some thoughts. I want to start, even though, since when it gets to the actual story of dinner, it starts with Martha, I want to start with Lazarus when we consider characters. Do you know how easy it is to roll off the tongue that Mary should be after Martha? I have to intentionally say to myself, Lazarus is who I want to say. Lazarus. Because yes, we were told at the beginning that he's the man that Jesus raised from the dead, and actually only recently raised. So here is Lazarus, and what's interesting about how John writes him is he says that when Martha served the meal, Lazarus was among those who ate. There's a really significant thing John is saying here. This is not just a resurrection more like on the way to heaven. That's the same thing that he does when he talks about Jesus being risen again. He's a physical being who, in order to survive, needs to eat and breathe. And he is fully now present back in the world. I wonder what that was like for Lazarus. Because we don't know prior to Jesus exactly where you ended up. I can't presume to know that. I really can't presume to know where we end up after Jesus, except that it's with God, and that's all I care about. But was that the case before they were redeemed? Wasn't it? There can be big philosophical, scholarly arguments about that. Either way, he's not in heaven. He's on his way to God in some way. How much do you want to come back? And he's back. Yeah. And yet in that moment, having been reformed literally, He's present with Jesus. He sees him for who he is. After his very unexpected, Jesus coming in ways that did not define who he anticipated Jesus to be, he is present, reclining at the table, still hosting his friend. These were Jesus' friends. How often do we hear stories of things that happened at Bethany, at the home of Lazarus? That's pretty profound. But he's making sure that every reader knows Lazarus is just the same as you and me now. A physical, living, breathing of this planet man who is engaging with him. That's actually why it says a little later that when the people heard of Jesus' arrival, they flocked to see him and also to see Lazarus, the man Jesus had raised from the dead. They wanted to know for themselves he was really alive, and that this then reflected Jesus is Ezekiel. No, wrong one. Jesus is Elijah. I did that the other day too, anyway. Elijah. He's raised people from the dead. The promise of that level of restoration. Wait, he's more than Elijah, but now we're seeing the fulfillment and the reminder. Okay. Lazarus. Pretty powerful. But actually, the first character, once we get to the dinner mentioned, 2 words said. Martha served. That is huge. Now, I get that culturally and traditionally that's normal, but the last time we have remembered a meal at Mary and Martha's home, Martha served, and Mary worshipped, and Martha got upset. Martha said, Lord Jesus, why don't you tell my sister to help me? And he said, no, Martha, she is doing what is right. So wouldn't it be easy to go, should she be serving? Shouldn't she be worship leading? Worship leading. Sorry, this is where my brain... Worshipping. Shouldn't she be worshipping? Shouldn't she be at his feet? Shouldn't she be reclining with the meal? And I want to say no. She is exactly where she is supposed to be. What those 2 words tell us is a really profound thing has happened in Martha's life. She has, in the unexpected way that Jesus has responded, allowed it to form her and change her, that her gifting is now a gift and not an expectation. Her gifting is now something she delights to bring to a Jesus who has raised her brother from the dead. She's now sitting here going, the first time, I do this because this is my job. It's her gifting too, for sure, but it's her, I'm the woman, this is the home, there are all these people to serve, I'm going to do it, but so should she. And resentment's built, and resentment's built. Now she's heard what God has said, and the answer taken is not do as Mary did in terms of action. It is do what Mary did in terms of heart. Yes. And Martha finds herself, and isn't that beautiful? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 2 words, and the 2 words tell us she has been reformed in Jesus' image. Yeah. She has been reformed to be who she was always meant to be after Jesus came in the unexpected way. He did the first time around what she did not expect. And this is the story of Jesus. He kept coming in ways we did not expect. Break down the walls of all my tradition. I think I did that the wrong way around. Break down the walls of all my... Something or other of all my religion. Yeah, there we go. Break down the ground of all my religion. Your way is better. They had expected that Jesus would come and free them by releasing them from other people's problems. Yeah. And instead he came and released them from theirs. Yeah. Martha served. 2 glorious words in this story, along with Lazarus ate. Yeah. Going to scroll to the next section of notes I'm up to. She has worked in partnership with him. I mentioned this verse last week. You've heard me say it before too. God works, we say for good. God works with good. God works for good with those, not for those, is a lot of what the scholarly work says. God works for good with those who are called according to his purpose. It's a partnership. And here, Martha has allowed that partnership. There are things in our lives that grill against us, that can cause all sorts of angst within us, and they almost always are attached to our giftings and our wirings and our passions, but have become so much our identity we think they should be someone else's. Or so much our identity they should be outworked the way we think, and they become morphed into something a little nasty. But here is the opportunity for God to work good with us the same way Martha did. Counter that with Judas. Because Judas comes into the story, and because John is writing this after the fact, he's letting us know this is the one who will betray, when none of that's been mentioned yet. In fact, to this point, I didn't do exhaustive research, but to this point, my quick checking is that the little we know about Judas is he was a disciple and he was a treasurer. That's it. But the treasurer tells us, in light of adding this verse, that what was his gifting? His gifting had to do with resources. But it became his passion and focus and morphed in a bad way. Imagine what it could have been surrendered to God. But here we are, and he's having his Martha moment. Today is his Martha moment. Poor Martha. Anyway, that's just the best I can do. Martha had hers at a different dinner when she got frustrated with, why isn't anybody else valuing this the way I'm valuing this? Came to Jesus with it, reformed in partnership with him, and now she can use it for the glory of God. Judas, his moment, where he sees this, but one, he doesn't go to Jesus with it. He doesn't say, what are you doing? Why would you allow it this way? He whispers it to the disciples. Not only that, he likes to put a nice little glamorous look to it. It could be a year's wages. It could go to work for the poor. Except that the disciples all know that's not what he's doing. That's just... I hate to say, I know I can be inclined to talk my frustration or my situations that are not okay and put a beautiful veneer off, but shouldn't it be that way? Why don't they value that? That's when really it's just coming up against my will and my self-control and my wanting to choose. Glossy veneer. This is what he's done. And John won't let the reader even think that's the truth by explaining he's a thief and has stolen the money. But I think you can see how much this gifting has gone bad, and that it is a gifting that he's never sorted out, because there's more than just what John is telling us. I want to ask, do you know the price of valuable items when you see them? If I was carrying a Marc Jacobs bag, would you know what it was worth? No. I tell you that for my anniversary, actually it's here just because it was the bag I had. For my anniversary, I got a nice handbag, not anywhere near a Marc Jacobs version. It was leather this year for the 3rd anniversary, and Pete said, and we'd agreed, for Pete shopping on his own for me puts him in a cold sweat. And the poor guy has 16 days to do it. My birthday, 8 days later is Christmas, and 8 days after that is our anniversary. He only has 16 days where he has to do it, but it's 16 days of terror. So we make decisions around, he calls it that, we have some fun, yeah? I'm not offended at all. We say that we will shop together for anniversary presents, yeah? Let's do it together. But he says, given it's leather, he wants it to be a bag. We shop together. We go into Burberry. Hands right with that whistle. I knew they were expensive. I did not know they were that expensive. No, we're not doing that. Doesn't matter if we can afford it or not. I'm not owning something that's purely a bag that costs that much money. Does anybody know here what Michael Jordan Air Jordans cost? What they're worth? Do you know what they're worth, Holly, with a bit of a nod?
Like $1,000. What?
I think there are some of them that are worth multiple grands worth, like tens of thousands of grands worth. It reminds me a bit of, and you know I love Gilmore Girls, it reminds me a bit of a scene in Gilmore Girls where her dad had invested money when she'd first been born, and it had matured. Whatever it was, it had been sold, and I invested it for you. It's not charity. Here it is, $75,000. And she instantly, once she accepts that it's not charity and a gift or whatever, it was in her name. She sits down on paper and she starts writing, and she goes, "I could get 150 Jimmy Choo pairs of shoes from $75,000. 150 pairs of shoes? What do those shoes cost? You are not buying Jimmy Choo shoes," is Richard's reaction. And that's fair enough. It'd probably be this Richard's reaction too, come to think of it. She instantly knows what a pair of Jimmy Choo shoes cost. Do you?
No.
I don't. Interestingly, in this story, the only person who knows what that jar of perfume costs is Judas. He doesn't buy perfume. How does he know what a jar of essence of nard costs? So it's not just even a somewhat expensive bottle of perfume like, I don't know, what do people wear for perfume? Oh God, Chanel number 5. That's the one I heard from a few people. The rest got lost in the mix. Which would be $100 or more, I'm guessing.
$298 for 100 ml perfume.
A husband who knows because he buys it for his wife.
Get duty free.
There's a reason to know, yeah? That, in my book, is an expensive bottle of perfume. That is not a year's wage.
No.
The perfume Mary is bringing is exorbitant.
Yes.
Exorbitant in cost that it would be a year's wage. But see, she had her moment with Jesus way back at the beginning. Her sin so great in her mind, and actually in everybody else's, when it came to her living outside of marriage relationships. But her acceptance of his reforming her and calling out the God in her, the image of God in her, that actually she's all in. And nothing is worth more than him. And so her worship, still the same style as been, is expressed. There is nothing that holds her heart but his. It can be valuable. And no one is saying today that we should all now grab a year's wage and give it. And if every Easter we were to give a year's wage, you would have a wage to live off, yeah? It is to say that nothing is sacred above God. Martha has found her place of nothing is sacred above God, and she serves with everything she's got. Lazarus has given of his friendship in the same way. Mary is showing that in her year's worth of wages. But when Judas is faced with his Martha moments, and he... Oh, good. So thank you. And he knows it costs a year's wages, which I just got to go, Judas, what were you thinking? How do you know that? You become obsessed. 3 years of hanging out with God, 3 years with hanging out with the embodiment and the entire essence of the God of the universe, and his focus is still money. That can be the case for all of us in different ways. Mary had hers right at the beginning of her encounter with Jesus, from the very first moment, and it's stuck. Martha is sometime into a relationship with Jesus before she has that Martha moment. Judas is almost at the end of his encounter with Jesus, his 3 years of living with Jesus. It's the same for us. And it's probably true that we would be in all of those moments. We had our first moment of coming. We have our moments in the middle. Sometimes there are things so deeply profound and held in our hearts and in our spirits, they might take the journey to be let go of. But may we not be Judas in our response and hold on to it and not take it to God and ask the question. He did not talk to God about it. He talked to others. And he stewed on it. And he let habits form that were not good. When faced with an unexpected Jesus who didn't do things the way he thought they should be done for religious reasons, he did not allow it to reform him. He allowed it to harden him. In fact, when you go on, the next is the Palm Sunday story of the triumphant entry, and you watch an entire Israel head down the same road. They are super excited that finally the Saviour has come and is riding in on the donkey, expected to be the one who rescues them from their oppression. In their mind, someone else who's oppressing them. So that he should go to the seat of the Roman power and topple it. And yet he comes into the city and he goes to the seat of their power, the temple, and clears it out. And in that moment, the same moment of Jesus turning up in an unexpected way, some people became hardened and said, no, we will not be moved from our tradition or our religion, and plotted to crucify him or turn their backs on him, and were standing there jeering at him when he was before Pilate and before Herod. There will have been some who saw it and recognised it as religion and tradition that was not God honouring. Yeah? There are traditions we should keep, I just want to be clear. But the ones that are not on a good foundation, and will have been horrified at what happened next. The truth is, Jesus almost never comes in the ways we expect. And he always comes to work on us. We are where the seat of power needs to be changed. We are where the freedom comes in. We are needing freedom always. But it's not from someone else. It is from ourselves. And when he comes in an unexpected way, what will we do? In this last couple of weeks, I have found myself thinking and in places that actually I'm not normally prone to anger, and the level of anger at multiple situations and people going on in my head has been intense. And I have just gone, God, I don't know what to do. Like, one, I feel like Peanut's character, but that's the best way to say it because I don't want to say it out loud. But and then just going, God, this is days of this, and I get there might be justifiable reasons, but what is this deep within me? And I've known my God since I was this high, and how can I be in this place? And there can be justifiable reasons for finding myself in this place, and yet Jesus comes. Well, one, will I take it to him? Because actually in all those stories, really, Mary maybe didn't come to him. I have to rethink that story. Yeah, no, she did. She came to him at a dinner party. And Martha came to him with her complaint. And Judas didn't. Come to him and go and hear the truth. Or just sense, God, I know this is not right in my heart. And I don't know what to do with it. And I don't know how to get rid of it. But this is not you. And allow, with partnership, my Easter gift from him to yet again be set on the right path. What about you? I say that as someone who, I was going to say 25 years ago. That's what you said? No, you said 60-something. 25 years in the church. I'm not that young anymore. If I was this high, we're talking 45 years with God. 45 years and still stuff to work on. And a constant coming back. That's the gift of this Easter. That's the gift of the reminder of Palm Sunday and the events leading up to the crucifixion, is that you have a Jesus who can absolutely take the vitriol you need to throw. For whatever it is that's likely to relate to your gifting, by the way, in the same way it did for Judas and Mary and Martha. Take it, but then give you the truth you need to hear. And we may not like it. And I often don't, but more and more in life know it's the truth. Yes, Lord, you're right. I'm made in your image, not my fallen image. I'm made to reflect your glory. What do you look like in this? And be reformed in him in the unexpected. That's what I think this Easter, this preparation time for Easter allows for. Yeah? But it is him and what he does in us. And so I think I'd just like to close with a prayer and sing I Speak Jesus. Because if I think about who has the most power in our lives, it's Jesus. Mary came to Jesus. Martha came to Jesus. Judas did not. Mary spoke. Well, no, Mary wept, actually. Martha spoke, but the weeping spoke anyway. Judas grumbled to others. It can be hard to speak. It can be hard to say, but Jesus holds us. And in none of those responses do I ever hear a God who, even when he's correcting, which he does, and he does, actually, Jesus responds to Judas. But it doesn't say Judas said it to Jesus. Jesus just responded anyway, and he refused to take that moment. He refused to live what was on offer to him. And it resulted in him so churned up that he goes and betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And the outcome of his life tells me he is not okay with that decision. Because you don't, after the one you have followed for 3 years, has been killed that you helped to do, you can't be okay with that decision if you choose to do what he did. You have to have come face to face with yourself and be horrified. But in the moment, we'll not hear it. Will we be reformed by him? By going to him, telling him, and taking what he says, that he will say with such kindness and mercy and gentleness, because he is always kindness and mercy and gentleness, but he's also truth. The truth kindly, the truth with mercy, because we need it that we might be formed in his image. I want to end up like Martha, who the first time is just all a mess with her serving. But this time, Martha served. Full stop.
Yes.
Whatever your gifting is. If you want to come up. Lord, you did so much for us. You do so much for us. You still are interceding for us at the throne. You are present and speaking to us always. You take whatever we throw at you and you never say, I'm done with you. How are you not already sorted? Which I'm so grateful for. And you free form us, Lord. You work together good with those who love you and are called according to your purpose. Lord, we love you and we come to you. We will declare that your name is power and your name is healing and your name is life. Amen.